And it's so easy when you're evil. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Omni Viewer here with another unscripted rambling about a movie I recently saw in theaters. This time, Suicide Squad, the movie that everyone was hoping would be the salvation of the DC Extended Universe. Assuming you thought it needed saving to begin with. Yeah, maybe you're like me and you didn't hate the last two movies, but for the most part, it seems that people just don't like the direction DC's going in, and Suicide Squad looked like it was going to go in a different direction and maybe be the saving grace. So, is that the case? It definitely is going in a different direction, and I will say it is a very good movie. Will it change your mind? I want to say the answer is also yes there, but I've seen other people's reviews already. I know that's not a definite. No guarantee that it will change your mind. There are some people who are just clearly determined to hate DC through to the end. I won't name names, I'm not that kind of person, but, well, anyway. So no, it may not change your mind, but there's a good chance it will, because Suicide Squad really is a good movie. It's very different from the other two movies too, I should specify. I have to really emphasize that, because if you're expecting more like the last movie, it's very different. Because it's a different team behind the scenes, sort of like with the case with Star Trek Beyond. Very different team behind the scenes there, resulting in a very different movie from the two that came before it. Same with Suicide Squad. And it's all really good. It's a fun movie for starters, and that's something a lot of people have said was lacking in the previous movies. Not that there were no jokes ever in those, but they were more serious movies. This is more fun. If there's a movie I had to compare it to, I would say it's Guardians of the Galaxy. Very much in terms of tone and in soundtracks, certainly. There's a lot of pop music, some of it good, like the classical stuff, and some of it garbage, like the modern stuff. Of course, your taste in music may vary. But, I think that's the best comparison. If you liked Guardians of the Galaxy, and I don't see why you wouldn't, you'll probably get something out of Suicide Squad. It's very interesting, though, because this is the first comic book movie we've got so far that focuses on the villains. I mean, yeah, you can say stuff like, well, Watchmen is supposed to be ambiguous, or V for Vendetta, the character V was a terrorist, but he wasn't really the main character, or because that was Evie, or something like, there are plenty of movies where the villain is the more interesting character anyway, but none so far where the main characters are, in fact, the villains, where they are the protagonists, the characters we follow. And that really does create some interesting differences. I mean, for example, I don't want to give too much away, but like when the villain of the story, like the actual antagonist villain, is making the "we must join forces, you should work for me" ploy, whereas a hero would say, absolutely not, or have to be tempted with something really, really precious that they wanted, or somehow duped into it or something. The villains just hear that and go, well, maybe that's not a bad offer, actually. Should we consider it? I don't know. That alone is interesting, because these aren't people who are doing the right thing because they know it's the right thing, or because they have some sort of compulsion to do it, or some sort of deep-seated drive, something that motivates them. They're doing it because they're being forced to do it. Because they have, I don't know how much you know about the Suicide Squad in the comics, this isn't really a spoiler, but the way that the villains are controlled is they have explosives in their heads. And if they try to go AWOL, pop goes the weasel, basically. Literally, if you use old vernacular for criminals. But anyway, so that alone is that alone makes all the difference, I think. This is the first villain-centric movie, but it's also giving us more of an insight into the villains. Because, I mean, like I said, there have been movies where the villain was the most interesting character, but they still weren't the focus. And putting the villain actually in the spotlight is a good idea. Because, as the old saying goes in many variations, no villain ever really thinks he's a villain. He always thinks he's doing the right thing. And we get to see that in Suicide Squad. Like, Deadshot doesn't kill people because he is evil. He kills people because that's his job, basically. That's how he makes money. He's a hitman. Or Harley Quinn, I mean, wow, you just know how tragic her backstory is. We get to see a little bit more into her psyche. And by the way, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, amazing. Like, I know it's not the animated version or anything, but still, really good way to bring Harley Quinn to the big screen. And she was so much better in this than she was in Legend of Tarzan, because she really didn't have anything to do in Legend of Tarzan. Here, she just owns it. That's another interesting thing, because there's that moment where, I mean, this isn't really much of a spoiler, because it's following the plot mechanics. There's that moment of doubt, basically, where the villains think they've pretty much lost and are giving up. And there's stuff where we learn El Diablo's backstory. Won't spoil it. It's a really big reveal with him. But what's interesting is that in that scene, there's really nothing that says that where the villains are all going, we should be good, we are good, we can be good. No, when you learn El Diablo's backstory and how much guilt he has on him and how he views himself as a monster, Harley Quinn's response to that is, own it. Like, stop denying what you are. Which, I mean, that's, on the one hand, not a bad message to embrace who you are, but at the same time, when you're dealing with villains, it's kind of iffy. Anyway, though, it makes for a very different experience. Yes, it still follows the basic plot mechanics you've seen in other comic book movies, but, you know, the old saying goes, the same story has been told over and over again since the story was told in the first place, which is a cumbersome way of phrasing it, I know, but I am making this up as I go. It's all in how you tell a story that is what makes it distinct. You can tell a story that's been told before, and you'll only get called out on it if you don't do it in a way that grabs our attention, or that is good. If you can tell it in an interesting way, if you can make us really care and distract us from the fact that it's a familiar story, for all intents and purposes, that's what counts. And I think Suicide Squad does that. So, I would say watch it. Then again, I've said that I like the other two DC movies, so maybe that alone is enough to make you think that I have horrible taste in film. I don't know. I still think it's good. I think you should check it out, if only to make up your own mind, if you haven't already. Because ultimately, that's what matters. You have to make up your own mind about these sort of things. You can't let people like me, talking heads on a screen, tell you what to think. So I would say go see Suicide Squad, but it's your choice. I do think you'd be missing out though. So, those are my thoughts. Until such time as we meet again, this is the OmniViewer signing off. Ooh, witchy woman.